I still remember the morning I first saw her. The city was alive. Honking cars, pedestrians rushing past, the smell of fresh coffee wafting from street carts. But somehow, all of that noise faded the moment our eyes met. I was juggling my usual chaos, emails piling up, calls to return, 1,000 little deadlines pressing down on me. And then there she was, standing by the coffee shop window, laughing at something her friend said, completely unaware that she was about to disrupt my world. I had always considered myself practical, maybe a little too grounded. My life revolved around numbers, schedules, deals, things I could control. But that morning, watching her, I realized control didn't matter. Not really. There was this lightness in her laugh, a spark in her eyes that felt like a secret meant just for me that we met by chance. Or maybe it was fate disguised as coincidence. I remember nervously ordering my coffee, almost burning my tongue because I couldn't stop glancing at her. And when she looked up, caught my gaze, and smiled, God, that smile. It felt like someone had pulled back a curtain I didn't even know existed. Our first conversation was awkward, endearing in the way that first encounters often are. She teased me about my overly cautious coffee order, and I made some lame joke about how my life was all spreadsheets and strategy meetings. She laughed, genuinely laughed, and it felt like the world had softened around me. I still replay that moment in my mind. The way her hair caught the morning light, how the city seemed to pause just for that instant, and how my chaotic life suddenly had room for something, or someone, beautiful that as we walked out together. I remember thinking, I never thought someone could fit so perfectly into my chaotic life. Yet she did. There was hope there, bright and tender, like the first notes of a song you know will stick with you forever. Even now, thinking back, I can feel that warmth, the way it nudged at the edges of my careful, ordered world and promised that life could be different, better, more than just routines and responsibilities. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Our connection grew in ways I hadn't imagined possible. At first, it was the little things, messages that made me smile at my desk, quick coffee runs that stretched into hours, shared playlists that revealed parts of each other we'd never voiced. Every interaction felt effortless, yet profoundly grounding, like finding a lighthouse in the middle of a stormy sea. I remember one evening in particular. We'd spent the day wandering through the city's quiet streets, the sky streaked with pinks and oranges from the setting sun. I held her hand, and it felt natural, like it had always been meant to be that way. We didn't need to talk constantly. Silence itself became comfortable, filled with understanding. She had this way of noticing things, my frown when a call went poorly, the slight tension in my shoulders when I was overthinking, and somehow, without judgment, she made it easier to breathe. Those moments made me reflect on my life before her. Work had always been my main focus, my life tightly scheduled and meticulously planned. But with her, I learned that spontaneity could be beautiful. I'd laugh at jokes I didn't fully get just to see her grin, and I'd let my guard down in ways I hadn't allowed anyone else. It wasn't perfect. We argued occasionally, stumbled over misunderstandings, but even those moments felt real and raw, grounding our connection rather than shaking it. One night, I remember us sitting on her apartment balcony, the city lights sparkling below. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I could feel her breath in sync with mine. I thought about how much I'd grown to rely on her presence, how her laughter had woven itself into the fabric of my day. And I realized, this wasn't just a fling, a passing excitement. It was something enduring, something I wanted to protect with everything I had. Visually, I imagined the montage. Us laughing over takeout on a rainy night, sharing headphones on. A crowded subway, quiet walks in the park where the world feels paused, just the two of us existing in perfect harmony. Those small, cinematic moments built a story of trust, warmth, and intimacy that felt larger than either of us. I often caught myself thinking, almost unconsciously, I never thought love could feel like this. So easy, yet so grounding. There was a hope in it, yes, but also a vulnerability, a quiet awareness that life isn't always kind. Still, for that season of our lives, it felt unstoppable, unshakable. And maybe that's why, looking back, the moments that followed would hit even harder. They contrasted so starkly with the simplicity and purity of what we had in those early days. Everything felt perfect, at least until the first time I met her dad. I had imagined it as some warm, easygoing encounter. A few polite questions, maybe a laugh or two over dinner. But reality had a way of twisting expectations. The first handshake felt cold, calculated, like I was being weighed in. Silence. His eyes didn't just look at me. They measured me. Like a merchant assessing a potential investment at first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just cautious. But subtle things started to creep in, little moments that made my stomach tighten. A pointed comment about my career, a lingering glance at my car, a casual question that felt more like an interrogation. He would nod politely, but there was a sharpness behind it, a quiet assertion of control that set my nerves on edge. I remember walking out of that meeting and feeling an unfamiliar heaviness. The city outside was the same, the honking cars, the neon lights, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying our interaction, trying to pinpoint if I'd said the wrong thing, if there was a way to make him like me. I had never encountered that level of scrutiny, and it was unsettling. Even more confusing was her reaction. She laughed it off later, brushing it aside like it didn't matter. "He's just protective," she said, squeezing my hand as if that small gesture could erase the tension that had lodged itself in my chest. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that this was more than just parental concern. Flashbacks started creeping into my mind. The carefree dates, the quiet walks, the laughter we shared. Those memories now felt fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of breaking. It was jarring to realize that the foundation of our happiness might not be as solid as I thought. Visuals for this part play themselves out vividly. A crowded restaurant, where I'm seated opposite him, the camera panning over the clenched hands, the slight frown, the tension in my shoulders. A city street at night where the neon glows feel harsher, colder than they ever had before. Even ordinary objects, the cold steel of a doorknob, the hum of traffic outside, seemed to echo my rising anxiety. I remember thinking, almost without realizing it, why does he feel like a storm waiting to happen? And that was the first seed of doubt planted, a small warning sign, barely noticeable at first, but enough to make me question whether the world I'd built with her could survive the intrusion of someone who saw love not as connection, but as negotiation. That I'll never forget the day it happened. I had been cautiously optimistic after our first meeting with her dad, telling myself that maybe I was overthinking everything, that perhaps I just didn't understand his way of expressing care. But then came the phone call, one that turned my entire world upside down. $300,000, he said, his voice flat, almost casual. Or forget my daughter. I froze. The hum of the city outside my apartment felt distant, muffled, like I was underwater. I remember staring at the phone as if the numbers themselves were a joke I couldn't grasp. $300,000. Just like that. No explanation, no conversation, just a price tag slapped on a relationship I thought was sacred. The first wave was disbelief. Surely, I misheard. Wait, what? I stammered, hoping the line would buzz, that some mistake would make itself known. But the voice on the other end was calm, unwavering, resolute. He wasn't joking. He wasn't testing me. He was serious. Anger followed quickly, sharp and searing. How dare he? How could anyone reduce something as intimate, as human as love to a monetary transaction? My hands clenched into fists, and my mind raced through every memory I had with her. Our laughter, our quiet nights, the warmth of her hand in mine. Was all of that for sale? Was I expected to pay for permission to love someone? She called me later that night, her voice shaking. "I didn't ask him to do this," she said, tears catching in her throat. I could hear the panic behind her words, the same panic that mirrored my own. For a brief moment, I considered giving in. Maybe it would smooth things over. Maybe life could return to normal. But even as the thought crossed my mind, a bitter taste settled in my stomach. Was this really love if it came at a price? Flashbacks hit me like punches. Our first date, her laughing in the rain, the quiet balcony evenings where the city lights flickered below us. Each memory, once warm and safe, now carried a shadow. That blissful world we'd built together suddenly felt fragile, a house of cards threatened by a single, cruel demand. Visually, the scene is stark. A dimly lit apartment, rain streaking the windows, the phone clutched in my trembling hands, reflections of neon light glinting off the table. The camera lingers on the tightness in my jaw, the tension in my shoulders, the sense that the ground beneath me has shifted permanently. And then a thought burned through the shock. $300,000? Just like that, as if love had a price tag. It wasn't just disbelief anymore. It was betrayal. The man I had hoped could be a father figure in our story had turned it into a negotiation. And suddenly, I realized that the fight for this relationship wasn't just about love anymore. It was about standing up for dignity, for principle, and for something I couldn't and wouldn't buy. After the ultimatum, my mind became a battlefield. I couldn't stop replaying the call, over and over, like a record stuck on the moment that shattered everything. Part of me wanted to give in. Maybe paying the money would restore the peace. Allow life to continue. Let us exist without this looming tension. But another part of me recoiled at the thought, furious that love, something I had trusted and cherished, could be commodified like a business deal. That I found myself walking the city streets at night, the glow of streetlights reflecting off wet pavement, trying to sort through the storm inside my chest. Each step felt heavy, weighed down by choices I didn't want to make. My phone buzzed constantly, messages from her, worried and confused, and from friends offering advice. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone seemed to think it was simple. Pay, move on. But I couldn't. Couldn't I? I questioned myself endlessly. Was I being stubborn, or was I finally standing up for my principles? Flashbacks mingled with reality, haunting me. I remembered laughing with her on rainy afternoons, the way she rested her head on my shoulder while city lights flickered below. I remembered late-night talks about dreams, about family, about futures that now seemed impossible. Those memories made the choice almost unbearable. How could I protect my integrity without hurting the one person who had become my anchor? The apartment felt suffocating. I sat alone, staring at the city beyond the window, the hum of traffic blending with the relentless ticking of my own doubts. Every scenario played in my mind, paying the money and resenting it, refusing and losing her, compromising and losing myself. My chest ached, and for the first time in months, I questioned whether love was worth the pain it now threatened to bring. And yet, deep down, a quiet voice whispered that yielding would not preserve love, it would betray it. I could feel the anger simmering, a determination starting to rise from the despair. Even in the throes of heartbreak, a small clarity emerged. I couldn't let anyone put a price on human connection, not her father, not circumstance, not even fear itself. But knowing what I should do didn't make the choice any easier. I remember the morning I made the decision. The city outside my window was already buzzing with its usual chaos. Car horns, footsteps on pavement, distant sirens. But inside me, everything was still. I had spent countless sleepless nights weighing every possible outcome, and finally, it became clear. I couldn't bend, I couldn't negotiate, and I certainly couldn't pay a price for love that should have been unconditional. It wasn't easy. The thought of cutting ties with her father, severing professional connections I had painstakingly built, made my stomach churn. But the alternative, compromising my principles, felt far worse. That I walked into the office that day with a strange mix of dread and resolve. The walls felt tighter than usual, the fluorescent lights harsher. I signed the termination documents, my pen shaking slightly in my hand, and filed away every contract, every deal that had tied me to him. There was a finality in it that was terrifying, but also liberating. I wasn't just walking away from a man. I was reclaiming my life, my integrity, and the love I refused to commodify. Later, I sat alone in my apartment, the hum of the city muted behind closed windows, and let the weight of what I had done settle in. A part of me mourned the loss of convenience, the relationships that had come with the business, and even the fantasy that everything could have been smooth if I had just paid the money. But beneath the mourning, there was an unexpected lightness, a subtle relief that I hadn't allowed fear or greed to dictate my choices. I realized that standing firm didn't just protect love, it protected me, too. Flashbacks of past decisions in my life replayed themselves, now with renewed clarity. I thought of times when I had chosen honesty over shortcuts, integrity over profit, and how each of those moments, small as they seemed at the time, had defined who I was. This choice, painful as it was, felt like a culmination of all those lessons, a proof that I could survive loss and still stand tall. The visual for this moment is striking. Me placing the last folder on the desk, walking out of the office with a heavy but steady stride, city lights reflected on the glass windows, a stormy sky above mirroring the turmoil within. Even the air felt charged, like the world knew this was a turning point. I whispered to myself, almost in disbelief, I can't buy love. I won't. And if that means losing him forever, then so be it. The aftermath hit harder than I expected. Cutting ties with her father didn't just end a business relationship. It sent shockwaves through every corner of my life. Almost immediately, his anger spilled into every interaction. Calls went unanswered, emails ignored, and casual messages from mutual contacts carried an unmistakable chill. It was as if, overnight, the world I had known had shifted, leaving me on the outside looking in. She was hurt, too, caught in the middle of a war she hadn't asked for. I remember the way her voice trembled over the phone when she called, the quiet desperation behind her words. I didn't ask him to do this, she whispered, almost breaking. I wanted to reach through the line and hold her, to tell her that my choice wasn't about rejecting her. It was about standing for what we both deserved. But even my own heart ached, knowing that my decision, principled as it was, had caused pain in the person I loved most. Flashbacks haunted me as I navigated those days. I remembered dinners where her father had laughed at my jokes, congratulated me on projects, moments that had once felt warm and genuine. Now, they seemed tainted, memories that mocked me for believing in them. Even friends weighed in, some supporting my decision, others questioning my stubbornness, adding a cacophony of voices to an already heavy storm. Visually, the tension unfolded everywhere. Phone notifications stacking up like small landmines. My inbox flooded with terse messages, me pacing alone in a dimly lit apartment, hands running through my hair, the city lights outside indifferent to my turmoil. I could feel the weight of every choice pressing down, every principle tested by the fallout I had unleashed. Yet, amid the heartbreak, there was also clarity. I realized that the discomfort, the anger, the sadness, it was all part of drawing a line, asserting who I was and what I would not compromise. I was reminded, painfully, that standing up for yourself rarely comes without cost. And in that cost, in the ache of immediate loss, there was also the first taste of freedom, a realization that I could face the consequences of my choices and still survive. After the storm of the fallout, I found myself alone more than ever. The city kept moving outside my window, indifferent to the chaos in my heart, and at first, that indifference felt crushing. I spent hours replaying every moment, the conversations, the laughs, the ultimatums, searching for some hidden lesson, some way I could have avoided the pain. But slowly, in the quiet, I began to see things more clearly. That I realized that the heartbreak wasn't just about her father or the money. It was about boundaries, about knowing my worth and refusing to let someone else define it. Every sleepless night, every anxious thought, every pang of doubt had led me here, to a place where I could finally understand what mattered. Love wasn't a commodity, respect wasn't negotiable, and my integrity wasn't something I could sell, even to ensure a temporary peace. Flashbacks mingled with this clarity. I thought of times in my past where I had compromised too easily, moments I had let fear or convenience dictate my choices. And in contrast, I remembered moments when I had held firm, even when it was hard, and how those decisions had shaped who I was today. That reflection gave me strength. I saw that this choice, painful as it was, aligned with every principle I had ever tried to live by. Visually, the scene feels quiet but charged. Me walking alone through a park at dawn, the first sunlight catching the edges of leaves, a soft breeze brushing past, notebook open in my hands as I jot down thoughts. The world is still awake, but there is a pause in my own mind, a moment to breathe, to absorb, to understand. I could feel the tension in my chest easing, replaced by a deep, steady rhythm of resolve that I whispered to myself, almost as a mantra. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. And in that whisper, I found a strange peace, a sense that even in loss, even in heartbreak, there was room to grow, to rebuild, to move forward with dignity intact. It was the first time in weeks that I felt truly grounded, as if the storm had passed and left a calm I hadn't realized I'd been seeking. The days after that clarity were quiet, but they weren't empty. I began to rebuild, not just my routines, but my sense of self. Work, once a place of obligation and stress, became a canvas again, a space where I could pour my energy without compromise or distraction. Every small victory, a project completed, a client satisfied, a personal goal achieved, felt amplified, like each step forward was reclaiming a piece of my life that had been overshadowed by conflict. That I also allowed myself to rediscover joy in ordinary moments. I took long walks in the park without checking my phone, cooked meals that reminded me of home, and reconnected with friends whose support had been steady even when the world felt against me. Those connections, untainted by drama or demands, reminded me that life could still be rich and meaningful, even without the easy shortcuts I had once sought. Flashbacks occasionally visited me, but instead of pain, they brought perspective. I remembered the nights we had laughed until our cheeks hurt, the quiet mornings sharing coffee, the dreams we had whispered to each other. Those memories no longer carried the sting of betrayal. They became reminders of what I valued and why. Standing firm had mattered. I didn't need validation from anyone else to honor the love we had shared. I only needed to remain true to myself. Visually, the scenes are small but powerful. Sunlight spilling into a tidy apartment as I make coffee. The rhythmic motion of pen on paper as I plan my day. The calm glow of a city skyline at dusk, signaling both endings and beginnings. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, unshackled by ultimatums or transactions, and gradually, I began to notice a quiet empowerment settling into my bones. Each choice I made without compromise, each boundary I enforced, became a testament to my resilience. I wasn't just surviving. I was reclaiming my agency, reminding myself that my worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval or wealth. The process was slow, sometimes painful, but undeniably transformative. I felt like a man rediscovering the ground beneath his feet, steady and strong, ready to face whatever came next. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges, and over the weeks and months that followed, I began to feel the weight of the past lift. The shock, the anger, the heartbreak, they didn't vanish completely, but they became part of a larger story, a story about choices, integrity, and the boundaries I refused to cross. I started to see the situation not just as a loss, but as a turning point, a moment that had tested me and ultimately strengthened me. That I think about her sometimes, the love we shared, and I feel no regret. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about holding on to the principles that define me. Love shouldn't come with a price tag, and life shouldn't force me to compromise my dignity for acceptance. Those truths became my compass, guiding me toward a future that I could build with honesty and clarity. Flashbacks linger occasionally. The laughter in the rain, the quiet nights on the balcony, the dreams we whispered to each other. But now, they feel like a gentle echo, a reminder of what was beautiful, not what was broken. I carry those memories with gratitude rather than pain, acknowledging the joy we had without letting it tether me to bitterness. Visually, the scene is serene and cinematic. Sunset over the city skyline, the warm glow reflecting on glass and steel. Me closing my laptop after a long day of work, taking a deep breath, and walking into the evening with quiet confidence. The soft murmur of life continuing around me, unhurried and steady. The world hasn't changed, but I have that I whisper to myself, almost as a quiet affirmation. I can't buy love. I won't compromise my life. I'll honor what was, but I won't let it define me. And in that statement, there's freedom, a freedom that comes not from avoidance, but from standing firm, from choosing integrity over convenience, and from understanding that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means embracing life, fully, on my own terms, with strength, clarity, and the knowledge that I am enough.